Hi, everyone, and welcome to God's Plan, Your Part, a podcast where our goal is to read the entire Bible in a year, seeking to understand God's plan of redemption while discovering daily and practically your part in it.
Hey, welcome back. Today we are in the Psalms again. Today we're looking at Psalm 25, 29, 33, 36, and 39. And the good news is I am not by myself. Jenny is here.
Hey.
All right, so as we're reading over these Psalms, obviously, go check them out for yourself. We will not be talking about every single one. We'll just be highlighting some of the ones we wanted to point out. So
I noticed Psalm 39, where it is titled by not obviously the original authors, but the title that they've added to it is called "What is the Measure of My Days?" And just lately I've been thinking about and considering just like what is like the purpose of our lives, like when things happen, like where does it all fit? And I think this psalm was really interesting to me because the footnotes in our Bible kind of talk about how when we are suffering, that it's okay to express your confusion to God, because when you're going through like really tricky trials, suffering throughout your life, it's really easy to get to a point where you're just like, God, what are you doing? Like, why is this happening in my life? And this psalm is one of those expressing that like confusion of like, what's going on with this? Like, I don't understand what you're doing. But at the same time, it says that this suffering is a reminder of how fleeting human life is. So like God is to be worshiped in these times, but also to realize like, hey, this is just like one small part of the big picture of our eternal self. Like this is just very, very, very quick fleeting part of the big thing.
yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. I did notice it says, you consume like a moth what is dear to him. Sorry.
What verse is that?
Sorry, it's verse 11. When you discipline a man with rebukes for sin, you consume like a moth what is dear to him. One, it recognizes the authority that God has over all things. And so because God is over all things, then we live our lives best when we are concerned about honoring God and God only and God first. Anything else is going to be like a really disappointing thing to live for. Mm-hmm. So one of the things this psalm talks about, it's in verse 6, surely man goes about as a shadow, surely for nothing they are in turmoil. Man heaps up wealth and does not know who will gather. It's that idea that if you live for money, you'll pile up money and eventually it will be somebody else's money. Mm-hmm. Because money just gets passed from one person to the next. I just had a conversation with a guy today about this guy that lives close to us that is very sick, and he has many, many things. And ultimately, he's kind of disappointed that he spent a lot of time gathering all those things when he could have been spending his time with people that he cares about, or family and friends, that kind of stuff. One of the things I was reminded of is when Jesus teaches about wealth, he talks about make sure you lay up treasures in heaven and don't lay up treasures on earth where moth and rust easily destroy. Mm-hmm. And so it sometimes serving God can seem like backwards or upside down or nonsensical.
How?
Just like, okay, so I have all this money. Why wouldn't I use it to improve my life? Mm-hmm. Like, why should I give my money to somebody else? Like, it's mine. I should do something cool with it. I should build a bigger house. I should go on a better vacation. Those things aren't wrong. But I don't think that is really what we're meant to do. I think we're meant to use our money to build God's kingdom here on earth. It's a tool for us to promote the things that God wants promoted. And ultimately, one of the ways that we keep God first is we don't put money first. Mm-hmm. And so that psalm is saying, like, your life is short. Choose your priorities well. Don't waste your time on things that are dumb.
You had mentioned one of the other psalms stuck out to you, 33, I think.
Yeah, I can just connect that idea to Psalm 33. Reading over Psalm 33, it is a worship psalm. It's celebrating God and who he is for what he's like and what he's done. One of the things that is really interesting about it, it says, I'm going to pick it up in verse 12. Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord, the people whom he has chosen as his heritage. Now, this, I think, would mean Israel. Like, those are God's people. He chose them to be a nation of priests. But it does say, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. Like, when we as a collective people honor God and honor God first, it is good for us as a nation and a culture and a people. Anytime God is not first, things are just backwards and you're confused and you're lost. And so, there's lots of frustration today about, culture and where we're at and what we're doing. And ultimately it's because we've lost God at the center. And now we're pursuing all kinds of extra nonsense. It doesn't make any sense. But then the psalmist even goes further. It says, the king is not saved by his great army. A warrior is not delivered by his great strength. The war horse is a false hope for salvation, and by its great might it cannot rescue. So the psalmist lists all these things that seem like they are big, serious, important things. And the psalmist basically says, hey, before God, they are nothing. And if God wants your army to fail, it's going to fail. If God wants your nation to fail, it's going to fail. If God wants your king to fail, he's going to fail. Like, we should seek God first, God only, because that is what ensures that our lives are headed in the right direction.
So I guess your part for today is definitely a reflection of both chapters that we talked about today. One, in that, like, ultimately, God is in control of our lives. He is sovereign, just kind of like what you were pulling from chapter 33 just then. But then also in chapter 39, about how God has, I guess, enabled us to suffer in ways that, like, we understand the frailty of who we are as humans, and that this is a small, fleeting part of our lives. But I guess also just to remember, like, who God is and that he's chosen us and that he ultimately has control over our lives, through the good or even through the suffering times. So just remembering him in those moments of suffering or those moments of joy, and knowing that ultimately he is in control of whatever situation you may come into contact with today, maybe in the next week, next month, next year. Just remembering his power and ultimately your part in that. So anyway, thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you back tomorrow.
Thanks so much for listening to God's Plan, Your Part. If anything stuck out to you, if you have any questions, or if you'd like to receive a Bible, you can email us at godsplanyourpart@gmail.com. Also, if you're enjoying the podcast, please consider supporting us through the link in our description. We love that you're on this journey with us, and we hope you have a great day. See you tomorrow.